Welcome to 10 with Ty. Today's episode, I speak to property expert and mentor Jane Slack-Smith. Now, not only is she the renovation queen, she's helped thousands of Australians on their path to financial freedom. Now, if you like today's episode, please subscribe because I've got some pretty exciting guests coming up. Well, and today I've got Jane, experienced podcaster, written multiple books. She's an award-winning mortgage broker and a good friend of mine. Thanks for joining me on 10 with Ty, Jane.
Absolute pleasure.
I know you're all about mindset with property, right? I was just wondering, over your time, what's the difference between the mindset of an average investor and a really good investor? What have you noticed over the time?
Oh, such a good question. And, this really goes to the point where I believe it's possible to hack success. And when I was working one-on-one with my property mentoring clients, I could see some of them getting it, some of them not. And I thought, of the tens of thousands of people that I'd help with my courses, I doubled down with this small group of people because I thought if I can actually navigate them through all of the questions and make sure that they've got someone there in their court to answer anything at any time, I can really kind of guarantee almost that they're going to not have to course correct too much. But what I found was these things just kept coming up for them. And there was this, you get people from 16,500 suburbs down to 3 suburbs, down to the streets where the renters were, down to the typical property, and they wouldn't pull the trigger. They wouldn't buy, or they'd buy the wrong asset, or at the last minute they'd back out, or they'd buy it and then have second thoughts and sell it quickly before the market goes up. And I was always trying to find what that was all about. And so I really, in the last 5 years, have doubled down into trying to hack what the successful and the unsuccessful do. And I really think it comes down to understanding and an awareness of what the stories are that are going on in your head. And because when I start talking to people about it, they might have, and I know you've had some experience with this, a family member who's lost all their money, and you've seen that, and you then have a different perspective to risk.
Yep.
Or like me, you grew up the daughter of a farm manager and a nurse, not a lot of extra money, and I could have been limited by that or maybe not. And it makes me think of that story of two guys that are sitting in the park bench, and there's one guy wearing a Marnie and really well kit out, and his brother next to him there's a druggie and is obviously on the last legs. And this kid walks by and says to the guy in the suit, how did you become like this? And he says, my dad was an alcoholic. And he looks at the other guy, and the other guy says, me too. Mm-hmm. So it's how you see things. And it's that awareness point that goes, why am I pulling back on this? Why isn't this right for me? And it might be a hunch, and it might be the gut feel, and it might be the intuition that's correct. Or it might just be, I'm so scared of making a mistake, I never actually pull the trigger. So that's really when I look at successful investors, there's strategic research and following those in the know and educating yourself and all those great things. But there's that last little point, and it's that mindset.
Fascinating. All right. Well, are you ready to play 10 with Ty?
10 with Ty, I'm in.
Okay, so everyone, the 10 questions are going to be the same, and I'm trying to delve into, the successful people. These questions took a long time for me to come up with, Jane. I hope they make you think. It's not just something that, people just rattle off. So let's play. Well, I've actually got a button here I can do, which I'm going to have some fun with. Wait, I've got to actually turn it off. I think it keeps going. There you go. It keeps going.
Let's see what I'm
all right, so the first question is, what has been your best investment?
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 answers here.
Okay.
I'd like to say the foundational property that my husband and I bought. So, I bought in my own name. Didn't want a man to be a financial plan. We bought our first properties individually. And that property actually gave me the competence to learn the research of where to buy and how to buy, and the skills of renovating. So I'm renovating strategically and making $2 for every $1 that I was investing. And that foundation, that first $25,000 that I put into that property, the renovation, $50,000, I bought it for $425,000. It was revalued 9 months later at $700,000, and I pulled that equity out. It's a good investment because it was a foundation. Was it the most successful? Well, I took the $50,000 out of that property and put it into the next property. And to date, there's $1 million of equity there. So $50,000 became $1 million.
Mm.
You know, you could look at it like that. And when I look at all of the reasons why people are successful, one of the most common things is actually having a partner that you can work with and talk to and support each other. So if I was going to say the best investment, it's probably in a relationship with someone who is aligned to you. And I look at, you know, Todd and I as partners, and the investment in relationship of being with someone that you can bounce ideas off, you know, and be creative with and support.
Yep.
That's probably a good investment too.
I love that. I think it's funny because when I wrote that question, I think I'm going to get such a variety of responses, right? It might be, I don't know, I'm not going to say what I think it could be, because I'm going to actually wait till I have 20 or 30, and then I'm hoping my wife will interview me, and I'm hoping to learn, like, to get something myself out of this. Ken with Ty is brought to you by Washington Brown, the property depreciation expert. Number 2. Now this for me is the one where I've learnt the most, right? I've learnt far more from your worst investment than your best investment. But I don't know about you, but you tell me, what's been your worst investment?
Okay, I have to be honest here and say that I took that engineering approach, the process, the procedure, the understanding of the critical analysis, the regression analysis on suburbs, etc., etc. I read 120 books on property. I looked at everyone's mistakes. I loved it when people used to talk about, you know, I made millions and then I lost it, and I've made it again. I'm like, teach me how you lost it. Like, how did you lose it? And so I love this question, because that worst investment actually pretty much allowed all of my property investments to actually make money and to do and create the vision that I had for them. There was one, and it was the first property that I sold, and after investing for 21 years, it was only last year, so 20 years before I sold the first property, and it was a unit and had body corporate issues. It's in the Supreme Court, you know, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But to be absolutely honest, the worst investment, which actually gave me probably one of the best lessons in property, was an investment in shares. So I don't get shares, have never got shares. 2020, we're sitting down, beginning of lockdown, and I say, my son's 6 months older than Taylor, and I was saying to my son, okay, we've sold all of your Lego, so we've got $1,000. Let's get into the share market. We're going to learn this together. You've only got 2 parcels of $500 each. You know, let's have a go. And we looked at it, and we were thinking strategically, going, what's going to happen? Everyone's going to have blood tests or COVID tests or something. Let's have a look at that market. And we looked at CSL and we looked at Sonic. Now, CSL, top asset in this class, right?
Yeah.
The absolute knee, you know, bees and knees of it. And then there's Sonic. You know, they're having a crack. It's pretty good. This one's like $300 a share. This one is like $5 a share. Went with the $5 share one. It's now 50 cents.
Yeah.
Then CSL, it's even higher. Then we looked at the next asset class, and I was like, Afterpay. Everyone's going to be online paying, but they can't really afford it. They want to keep some money in the bank. What should we look at? Afterpay, gold class in the market. And then there's Zip. And so, you know, we go with Zip. And actually, Sonic's like $35 a share. It dropped a little bit. It was Zip that went from $5 to 50 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And so really stuffed up. And my son's like, thanks, Mum. Like, my $1,000 is now $600, and we watch it every day going up and down, going like, that was bad. But what it taught me was, and it's what I teach people, is that you get into the right suburb, you've done all this research, you've got all of this knowledge, and you're like, yes, this is the golden egg. And then they like, the typical property that everyone wants in the suburb is a 3-bedroom house. And then the market moves a little bit and they go, bugger it, I'll buy a unit. And that's what I did. I bought the wrong selection in the right asset class.
You know, it's funny with a CSL $300 stock. That's about mindset, right? Because it's just depending upon how many stocks there are in that. It could split its stock and be worth, which is what they often do to make it more attractive to people, because they want to get over the mindset. I don't want to pay $300 for a stock. but it's got nothing to do with what the market cap should be and what it's worth, right? It's quite funny. Well, except for Berkshire Hathaway, right?
You're
So
talking
Warren's,
German at me at the moment. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, splitting stocks. I'm nodding, but I'm like going, different world.
yeah. So, well, as an example of that, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, he's never split his stock. So to buy one of his stocks, right, it's like, I think last time I looked, it was like 300,000 US for one stock. But he doesn't care, he doesn't need it. All right, number 3. What's been the most valuable investment advice you've ever received?
Okay, so I think from a property perspective, an investment perspective, it is buy the best possible property that you can afford in the best possible area that you can afford when you can afford it. It's time in the market with a strategic approach rather than trying to time the market. So every single time that I've bought a property, I haven't looked at interest rates or, is this going up or, this going down. It's like, okay, this is what I can afford. This is where the people want to be. This is the demographic, typical property. This is where the renters want to be. I can renovate and add value, create equity out of thin air, go for it. When I look at, starting my business, so I've always started businesses with mentors and coaches. I'm like, I'm just going to hack the success. Everyone else has made mistakes. Let me just find, the direct line. So when I started my mortgage broking business 18 years ago, and we can talk about how that's where that is today, but later. But when we started that, my business coach, my mortgage coach at the time, and he was a top broker, said, you can count the apples on the tree, but you can't count the seeds in the apple. And he's like, for every person that you talk to, turn up with heart with the best intention of how you can serve them and how you can help them. And if the best information is don't get a mortgage, don't refinance, don't buy, and give them that, they'll go away and tell 10 people to go and use you. So always turn up with the intention of, it's not a one and done, I need to make money, I need to do $5,000 this month. It's around turning up with the intention to serve. That's pretty important. And for me personally, success leaves clues. I'm just always looking for the clues.
Number 4, a mix. Like, this is something I always struggle with, right? What's the best mix in your mind of asset allocation? What percentage, if you had the ideal, I know it changes, but...
Can I just move on to the next question?
I might know what you'll say, but look, some of the investors that I'm going to get on this show are not just property. I want to. They might be business entrepreneurs. They might be share experts. So it's going to be I don't want to just get property people. So, but in your opinion, what's the best mix? Whether it be non-residential, residential property, shares, business assets, crypto. Not for me, crypto, but
we won't even get into crypto. But I do know now how to create NFTs. I've created one for my husband's art. So I'm always like, do it first, test it out first before you actually invest. So for me, once again, success leaves clues. I look at the BRW top 100 list and I look at the people, about 30%, 40% make their money in property, 100% hold their money in property, right? So I'm like, okay, so when the people have done their business deals and they're making money, they're like, where can I put it? And so I've always looked at that every year and I check it out. And I'm like, yep, it's still the same. So for me, I'm an entrepreneur, right? So I've started a mortgage business, a property education business, a money mindset business. I do coaching. I'm on advisory boards for a lot of companies, for startups. People pitch to me. I love that stuff. I make money out of doing that. I'm an affiliate and I support, the property professionals that I've used, my clients have used, and I refer them and I make money from that. So for me, the investment is always class is being aware of the asset class or being aware of the way that you're making money and diversify. So I have a number of businesses. I have a number of properties in different areas that I've been agnostic about where I've bought. So I have minimized the risk. So when I look at a portfolio, for me, I am heavy on property. I realize that my super doesn't have property in it. And I could double down in doing that. But I look at it and go, well, I'll leave that to the people who are doing whatever they do with the shares over there, and they think they're making money. But for me, it's around having a backup plan and a backup plan within the backup plan. Diversification, I've got my business, I've got a number of businesses. I've got my properties, I've got a number of properties.
Yeah, I love that. You know what I like? You know what's funny? You know, if say you started a tech company, right, and you ended up with 30%, and you might have a mandate that 1% every year you sell 1% of that stock, so it doesn't look like you're leaving the market. But when they leave that 1%, most people don't put it in shares. They go and buy properties, right? But as someone who's got 1,000 properties, like Harry Triggerboff or something, one of my clients, I guarantee he's not selling a property every year and saying, I need to buy some shares, right? So I think there's something in that. Number 5. Now, this is an interesting one. If you're 20 years old today, and I think I'm going to get a lot of different answers for this one, how would you invest 20? You've worked 2 years, you've saved 10 grand, $200 a week, you've got 20K. How would you invest it?
Okay, so I sat down with my 15-year-old son on the weekend and said, you know, Tyron had called me up and said, do you want to get onto this podcast? You know, I want you to share some secrets of success for Taylor. His daughter is about your age. You know, $20,000. What would you do if you're 20? And he said, Mum, that's such a stupid question. I was like, why? He said, technology is changing so much. You can't be specific about where to invest and what to invest in. He said, tomorrow something could come along. We've seen what's happened with AI, etc. Something could come along that would change everything. I was like, yeah, you know, that's actually really interesting. So if I look at the $25,000 when, you know, I was 28 and I invested in property, if I was going to give someone who was 20 and they had $20,000, I would give them this advice. So I've split it up basically. First of all, find what you're passionate about. So really find, you know, where your interest is and find, you know, go and find a mentor, do courses, read books. What just astounds me, you know, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about the fact that every second there's 400 billion pieces of information that come our way, but we actually only have capacity to receive 2,000 bits. So if you're always doing what you always did, or you've been brought up a certain way, or you have a certain number of beliefs or how things should be, you're going to stick with that, right? So I think at the age of 20, I would put some money, 5,000 or the 20 grand, into finding what you're passionate about, what your interest is. Then I'd probably spend $5,000 in exploring that. So if it is a business, you know, or if it is something like that, go and try that. Now, my son at the moment, he is rehabilitating, renovating shoes. So he's buying Nike shoes. He's buying them, you know, he's doing his flip and full price on those weekend job, makes $150 a fortnight, spends $150 on shoes, cleans them up, doesn't clean his school shoes, cleans them up and sells them for $250 to $320. So he's making like $100 a flip on these shoes. And he's doing it because he likes the deals. He's doing negotiation. He's learning things. He's getting scammed, but he's learning from that. You know, he's actually participating in the market, that arbitrage. He's now got enough money to buy new shoes that he can sell at a higher premium. Now, he's got a mate who loves Nike shoes. Now, he's making $3-4 grand a week, 15-year-old, on doing shoes, but he loves the shoes. My son, he likes the business, right? And so he's learning from someone who's done it before. So, you know, I think when I look at that, I'm like, you know, it's going to be in 5 years' time, you know, when Taylor's 20 or so, you know, there'll be something different, but it's about finding what you're interested in. Now, I know my son will move on to something else, where this other kid, he's making a business. He's getting a profile. He's becoming an influencer. People are coming to him for deals. So there's a difference. And so I would look at, you know, understanding yourself first, that awareness piece. And, you know, when I was 20, my friends used to laugh at me and go, Jane's in the self-help development down at the bookshop. You know, they'd yell out, we're at the bookshop, where's Jane? Down in personal development. I'm reading Tony Robbins going, oh, that's kind of interesting, right? But then I would double down and get the skills. So if you're going to have your side hustle that you're passionate about, so you can get a website for $500. You know, you can, you know, set up a Shopify store. You could, you know, do a Fiverr on, you know, your skills on design or whatever it is. Try it out, you know, and create that extra little cash flow for yourself. And then I'd probably look at $5,000 in that long-term investment. So, build a bit of long-term knowledge in your investment. So, you can't jump into property with that, but you can jump into fractional investing. So at the moment, there's quite a few fractional investing property groups, and there's one that's just come out in the last 2 weeks that's available to everyone. You don't have to be a sophisticated investor with millions of dollars. $2,500 you can start. So I would get into that to watch how, and it might be shares. Watch how the market moves and start building that long-term knowledge of investing, because we remember successful people always invest with their money in property in the end. Yep. And, it makes me think of Kurt Hahn, who was the principal of Gordonstone, where, Prince Charles and Duke of Edinburgh went to school, King Charles. And in the World War II, he was brought in to have a look at why, when the American naval ships were bombed, the old guys were surviving, the young, virile, strong, healthy guys were drowning. And they found that the older guys had a number of experiences in their life where they had to build up resilience. They had knockbacks. They had to pull themselves up. The young guys hadn't. So I think, if I was 20 and I was investing a bit, it's okay to make some mistakes. My son got scammed, he's not going to get scammed again, but maybe he will. But he's learnt from that. He locked himself in the room for 2 days. My husband and I are going, this is either going to be like the end of it all, or he's going to come out and learn from it. Came out, bought some new shoes. So, I think that resilience that in that long-term investment is really important. And then I have a buffer. I put $5,000 into a buffer, and that's your 2 to 3 months of, I'm going to walk from this job. This person can't make me do this, or I need to have a break, or there's something in the family that I need to have some time out for. Have a 2 to 3 months, $5,000.
I really like that because, finding what you're passionate about. I never even thought about that as an answer, to be honest, that just spending part of that on finding out what you really like can be the key, right? Because a lot of kids, I've still got friends that are trying to work out what they want to do, And if you can find that out early, and you love it, you won't care about the money will come, right? The money will come.
Goosebumps.
And so I think that's a really clever answer and really well thought out. Thank you. Do you own an investment property? Washington Brown has helped over 250,000 property investors pay less tax with the depreciation schedule. Visit washingtonbrown.com.au to pay less tax today. Okay, on the flip side, now there's going to be a lot of people that have got baby boomers, and unfortunately they might be 80 years old now. They might be ending up inheriting half a house or a quarter of a house or $500,000 from a deceased estate, perhaps. Because we're talking about parents that could buy properties back when they were affordable. So if you were to inherit $500,000, it's a very different answer than if you were 20 and you've saved for 2 years. What would you advise? Not that this is financial advice. This is what would you do with $500,000?
Well, I'm going to turn that on its head again.
Okay.
Like many people that I know in my age group, turned 50 during COVID, during lockdown. So 500,000 at 50, right? We're in that 50th club too. Yeah, we're in that club. So I'm going to turn this around because I think that it is exactly the same as what I've said to the 20-year-old.
Oh, that's good.
I'll tell you how. So first of all, I do a lot of vision calls. I have this vision call that we step into the future and we see the life that you want to have and how much it is. Now, most people think it's $100,000 or $150,000. When we go and we experience that and we come back and go, how much was it? Here's the big secret. It's usually at 60 to 80 grand. It's a lot less than what they think to actually live what they want. Mm. But the important thing is here, like if you just close your eyes for a second and you do this exercise, you go to sleep tonight, you wake up tomorrow, everyone that you love and the entire world has stopped being how it was yesterday, and you're the only one left. Do you want the Gucci shoes? Do you want the Porsche? Do you want the huge 5-bedroom house? What would make you happy? And usually it's you feel this loss and grief about the fact that you've lost the people that you love, and you realize it's time with the people you love. Your experience is an experience because of that. But if they're not there, what would make you happy? Making a bit of an impact, maybe creating a garden, maybe, living in a beautiful home that you can wake up in the mornings and meditate and be your best physical self. What would make you happy? So if you think about that at 50, and you spend some money on doing that. So I would say, if I had $500,000, that's self. I would spend $50,000 on finding that out over the next few years. Now, I know I've got a personal coach, mentor. I pay him 40 grand a year, and it keeps me on track. Keeps me aligned. I hear Tyron asking me to share stories of success for his daughter and put it into a legacy document as a podcast or book or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I'm all in. How many hours do you want to talk? And then you say, oh, and the other speakers are, Paul Clitheroe. And I'm like, oh, who am I to do this? Imposter syndrome sets in. And so, I keep aligned with that because I know those thoughts and feelings are just from a belief system that said you're not good enough, or, what are people going to say? I need external validation. And my coach keeps me on that. And that's, I'm coaching in that now because I love that. I love that, showing people the vision of what they can be. So I put some money into that. The next one, number 2, once again, the cash flow. A lot of people have got to this age and they're like, nah, corporate job, really? I'm looking at my boss's job and thinking, I don't really even want that job. Like, they're working 60 hours a week. They're all stressed. They're having heart attacks. I'm like, nah. What is that side hustle? So once again, maybe 25 grand into, following that opportunity, getting new skills, taking a bit of a break and saying, okay, if I was going to start something that I'm passionate about, what could that be? So I put some money into that. Okay, long-term growth, let's be honest, we're probably not going to retire at 65. It's probably more 70. And with the way that, we're going to be living forever with all the longevity changes and hacking into, age is a disease, not something that we have to just accept. We're going to be around for a lot longer. So I'd be putting the majority of the money, 400 grand, into buying $1 million house. 20% deposit gets me 200 grand, purchasing costs, buyer's agent, etc. Another 100. Renovation to add equity and value to it. $1 million house, you do it right in the right area. We know the stats. When you're 60, it'll be 2 million. When you're 70, it'll be 3 million. You've got 2 million in equity. Happy days. There's the vision already paid for, right? So I'd put that long-term money aside. And then the fourth one, once again, have a buffer. Now your buffer's a little bit more when you're at 50. So put another 25 into that. So I put 25 into the buffer. I put 400 into the long-term investment, 25 into cash flowing the little new side hustle, and 50 grand into a couple of years of getting coaching or finding out what that side hustle and your true passion and brilliance is that you want to bring to the world.
Wow, that was thought out. I'm not surprised a lot of it went into property and renovation, being the reno queen, correct? So, yeah, that's good. And, it's funny though, isn't it? As you turn 50, as we both are, you start, I don't know if your parents are alive, but my parents, you get to the point where, oh my God, I'm next, right? You start thinking, I've got to, like what you said at the beginning, what is important, right? And is it having a new car? No, it's not really. No, I think travel would probably be part of it for a lot of people. But yeah.
It's the experience.
I don't know. You start rethinking life, I think, when you get to 50 and you become a bit more, well, how long have you got left? Anyway, it's a bit morbid. Anyway, let's go back in time, seeing that we're both 50. Let's go back and say, we got the DeLorean. I went back to the future, and I'm going to visit myself at 20, right? And I see myself there and I tap myself on the shoulder and say, Ty, it's 52-year-old Ty. I've come back. I want to tell you something about investing. And this is what I've learned. What would you tell yourself?
To be honest, I thought about this and I thought I'd probably just give myself a confidence boost to say, you got this. It works out. Like, trust your hunches, trust your intuition, develop that earlier so you're not kind of manipulated into doing things that didn't quite feel right, or, buying a unit. I know I shouldn't buy a unit, but it's cheap, 20 years time you're going to turn out going, geez, it's in the Supreme Court, all these problems that it's having. So I would go back to myself at the age of 20 and I'd just say, you know what? It's all going to work out. It's all good. And the adventure is yours. But one piece of advice, the universe is actually conspiring for your success. And the only thing getting in the way is you. So, get out of your own head and get out of, the validation and, I have to do it the right way, or I have to do it how everyone else has done it, and trust your instincts. And, when it comes to investing, your skills that you build up with all your different industries and experience, bring them all together. And I love that of, I brought as an explosives engineer, the risk assessment that I learned to property. As a property, I looked at going, how can I minimize the risk? I developed the Trident strategy, do the research where you buy and buy well, make money when you buy, renovate. Some people do granny flats, subdivisions, or developments to add value. So have a plan B in case you didn't buy in the right place. And then plan C, growth. So you've got that long-term growth. So I took that into property. And when I went into, property education and creating the courses, I was like, well, who's the best at this? There's someone in America. Am I prepared? If I'm prepared to make an investment in my time and money in creating this, should I go to the best or should I try to hack it out myself? And I should go to the best. I don't want to be selling steak knives at the back of the room. I want people to see this as, an honest, authentic piece of information. So I went and signed up to a mastermind. So I took that learning. And then, I started this, your success club around the money mindset, the limiting beliefs, why people aren't going for their passion and purpose. And I went to a coach for that. So, for me, I'd go back to my 20-year-old self and go, it's all part of the journey, babe. It's an adventure. The universe is conspiring for your success. Just let it turn up.
Enjoy the ride. That's the end of part 1 of this podcast. Now, to listen to Jane Slack-Smith answer the rest of the 10 with Ty questions, download part 2. And there's also a bonus tip about renovation. I hope you enjoy it. If you own an investment property, then Washington Brown can help you pay less tax with an ATO-compliant depreciation schedule. Visit washingtonbrown.com.au to pay less tax today.